Hi, Soul Shines, and happy Monday! I wanted to start this episode a little differently today because, thanks to all of you, we've reached a milestone that truly touches my heart. We hit our first 100 subscribers. I wanted to share this moment because there is a profound healing in being heard. For a very, very long time, my voice was suppressed, and it was often because people were afraid of the venom running through their veins when confronted with the truth. But with this community, I have found the exact opposite. And I get emotional because finding this resonance with all of you is deeply healing for my inner child. And I'm so, so, so incredibly grateful to every single member of our growing frequency for that. And I really do believe that what goes around comes around. So I like to believe that you also find your own healing with the content that I make. So thank you all for creating a space where our truth can finally breathe. And let's work together to the 1,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe because I've noticed that 92% of my listeners aren't subscribed yet. So hit the subscribe button. And speaking of breath and breaking through, today we dive into the pink full moon. And that is a frequency that is so much more than only about beauty. It's about the raw, violent power of growth. Let's descend together into the alchemy of breaking ice. So, we call her the pink moon. And it's a name that is almost too sweet for the raw power that she unleashes. As we look up to that glowing shield in the sky, we can feel it, a vibration in our bones and a restlessness in our blood. Her name stems from the Volksflux Supulita. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Please let me know if in the comments. So the name stems from the Fluxupulato, the creeping moss flux that bores through the frozen crust of the earth with an almost violent life drive. It is a plant that does not wait for permission to live. It drills itself through the frozen crust of the earth with brute, unfiltered life drive just to exist. The indigenous people of North America, they actually named the full moons, like they named it the wolf moon, the pink full moon. So we really have to honor them in this episode, which we're going to do. The Algonquin, the Ojibwe, the Lakota, I really hoped I pronounced it correctly. If not, I'm so sorry. They knew this moon as the breaking ice moon. And that is no metaphor. That is a state of survival. It is the sound of the world crackling to become liquid again. It is the moment when the earth casts off its mask of winter and the liquid truth beneath becomes visible. We stand at the breaking point of the cosmos and ourselves. And to me, I find it um, not coincidental because I don't believe in coincidences, but I find it inspiring actually that that is exactly the moment that we are at now. We find ourselves at exactly the breaking point. And those ancestors, they knew that. We are not separate from this cosmos. We are the cosmos experiencing itself. And today we descend into the depths beyond the pink filter, to the permafrost of our own psyche and the untamed wisdom of our ancestors. Welcome to the Nyx Frequency. We're gonna start with the mirror of time, our collective rebirth. When we study history and lay timelines side by side, we see that this pink full moon serves as a cosmic catalyst for our greatest collective liberations. We, as humanity, have always used this frequency to break the change of the old, the chains of the old. I'm sorry. Central to this is Pesach, the Jewish Passover. But we have to look beyond the religious story. Pesach is the archetype of the forced exodus. It is the refusal to bake the bricks for another in the heat of oppression any longer. It is about the blood on the doorposts, drawing a boundary in the physical world to keep spiritual destruction out. It is the transition from the slavery mentality, where we have to wait for instructions, to the terrifying freedom of the desert. Pesach reminds us freedom is not free. It requires the courage to leave the familiar behind, and it reminds us that sovereignty is often born from chaos and the courage to leave the familiar behind. And this pink full moon forces us to identify our own slavery. And in the Christian tradition as well, the pink moon determines Easter, the universal law that death is only a condition for resurrection, the necessity of death to achieve resurrection. This is the ultimate metaphor for overcoming trauma. And not only there, but also in the Vedic, it is often on the same day as the birthday of Lord Hanuman. They call it, I believe, Hanuman Jayanti. I believe it's written with an R, but I believe it's pronounced as Hanuman Jayanti. And if not, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, back to the same thirst for freedom. We see it not only in the religious sphere, it is also reflected in history, as they told us. We see it back in the Paris Peace Treaties, where defeated nations regained their right to self-determination after the Second World War. April 1968, when we collectively decided with the Treaty of oh fuck, I really hate this. With the Treaty of Tlatelolco, I needed to rehearse that a couple of times. I'm so sorry. It's very difficult for me sometimes to pronounce certain things. Anyways, I'm not ashamed or bothered by it because we all have our flaws, right? Um, anyways, with the Treaty of Tlatelolco, we collectively decided that Latin America must be free of nuclear weapons. It was a moment when we, as humanity, as a species, chose life over destruction. We see it in the landing of Apollo 16, I mean, the alleged landing of Apollo 16, where we left the gravity of the Earth itself. Every time the ice breaks, we remind ourselves that we are not meant to be trapped in the cold of the past. And when we turned our gaze to the stars, from the groundbreaking flight of Yuri Gagarin to the landing of Apollo 16, the alleged landing of Apollo 16 in April 1972, we confirmed our position as explorers of the unknown. And even if the landing did or didn't happen, I mean, it's a nice metaphor, right? Every time the ice breaks, we shift our horizons. We repeat the pattern of the flux. We break through the impossible to find the light. This is the cleansing energy of the pink full moon on a global level. And now we need to jump back to the roots of the pink full moon, because the indigenous people, they already knew this. We must let go of the winter silence to hear the truth. They were the ones that warned us against the false voices of the cold. Remember the video that I made? This video in your head was never yours? About the voice that says we must stay small? That voice that says that we're not safe if we bloom? That is the voice of the frozen earth. It is the echo of a time when we had to freeze to survive. Astrology is the language of this truth. The Babylonians and Mesopotamians laid the foundation for the system. I'm going to talk about it in another video, which is going to come out later this week. So if you're interested in that, then please subscribe so that you don't miss it. But the Babylonians and the Mesopotamians, they understood that we do not just observe the cosmos, but that we communicate with it. And in ancient Egypt, the moon was connected to Thoth, the god of wisdom and sacred script. He was the one that helped the dead weigh their hearts against the feather of truth. In the shadow of this pink moon, we are invited to that same weighing. Ask ourselves the question: what is currently weighing so heavily in our shadow that it hinders our vertical growth? For the Celts, this was the preparation for Beltane. For them, growth was not a passive process, but a sacred fire. And a fire only burns if we dare to burn up the old wood, the shadows, the traumas, and the old identities. We cannot simply bloom if we are still holding on to the ashes of yesterday. We carry that history not only in our books or in the words that we speak, it's deeper because it's in our epigenetic code. We owe the names of our full moons to them. They were the ones who lived in a conversation with the land that we are only now beginning to remember. We honor here the indigenous people and each and every tribe. We honor the keepers of the Earth's seasonal pulse who understood that the moon is not a dead rock, but it's a living being with a message that vibrates through our very marrow. For them, for the indigenous people, this was the time of the sucker moon or the budding moon. They watched the sucker fish return to the streams to purify the water. Just as we now watch the truth return to our consciousness to purify our intent. They knew that we are part of an unbroken line, a silver thread of resilience stretching back to the first sunrise. And there is an ancient wisdom held by the indigenous people. This is the prophecy of the silent witnesses. It goes that animals are the silent witnesses of cosmic balance. Their prophecies warn us that when the Earth's frequency is out of alignment, our animals will show unusual behavior. When the breaking ice of the world begins, the birds may fly in different patterns. The creatures of the forest may act out of time. They are not confused. They are simply reacting to the cosmic imbalance that we, in our frozen state, often ignore. They are the alarm system for our collective spirits. They know that the behavior of an animal is a direct reaction of the Earth's heartbeat, a reflection of the Earth's heartbeat. When the cosmic balance is disturbed, the animals are the first to signal that. Many indigenous elders, such as from the Hopi Nation, have spoken about Koyanis Kutsi. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Again, I'm sorry if I didn't. It's meaning life out of balance. This is where the behavior of nature and animals serves as a spiritual mirror, like a mirror for the spiritual state of humanity, which reinforces that we are the cosmos experiencing itself. There is also a documentary made of it in 1982, I believe. So if you want to know more about Koyanis Kutsi, I invite you to do your own research in this. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Our ancestors survived the fear of winter scarcity for millennia. That survival drive, but also that deep shivering fear of the great cold, sits in our cells. It is written in the chemical tags on our DNA. The pink moon serves as a biological access code. When we feel inexplicably restless now or our heart beats faster for no reason, we are actually feeling the echo of a grandmother who generations ago stood in the biting wind, listening to the cracking ice of the river, hoping for the fish that meant food, but fearing the flood that meant loss. We honor their endurance by acknowledging that we are the living prayer of those who came before us. Every breath we take is a victory they fought for. We are here to purify that line, not by forgetting their pain, but by transmuting it, by becoming aware of these old fears now. We transform the survival trauma of our ancestors into the wisdom of the victor. We are the medicine they have been waiting for. Look at the palm of your hand. The lines there are not just ours. It is the roadmap of everyone who survived the winter before us. We are a walking archive of victory. The pink moon is the access code to these ancient frequencies. When we feel that deep desire to flee, it is the echo of an ancestor who didn't know if the river would carry them or swallow them. We are here to break that circle of fear. Our collective consciousness is the ultimate medicine. We heal the trauma here by no longer freezing the energy of the past, but letting it thaw into a river of wisdom. We are the purification of a bloodline that has stood in frozen survival mode for far too long. Let's be honest here for a minute. Growth is painful. So let's stop collectively pretending that growth is easy or comfortable. True growth is disruptive. And I'm going to sprinkle in some botanical uh, reference here because think of a seed. For a seed to become a flower, its whole world, its whole familiar structure must be destroyed. The seed hull must burst. Growth is at its core a destructive action. Growing pain is not a metaphor. It is a physiological reality of expansion. When a child grows, the bones are literally stretched. And this is the shadow side of the pink full moon, the confrontation with the chaos that arises when we outgrow our old form but have not yet reached our new form. We find ourselves in the vacuum, the in between land. We feel the pressure to bloom, to shine, to achieve. Well, we sometimes still feel ourselves deep in the cold mud. Ancient cultures approached this moon with awe and sometimes with fear because they knew that disruption is necessary. The chaos of transformation. Like I said, we have lost the old form, but the new one is not yet hard. We are liquid and vulnerable. Look at the trees. The sap flows expand the bark under enormous pressure. If our ego, our armor, is too stiff, it bursts. That inner friction we feel now is not a sign of failure. It is proof that the life force in us has become too great for the container in which we have locked ourselves to be safe. Do not fight the cracks, they let the light in. Again, the chaos that we experience in our lives now is not a sign of failure. It is growth that arrives faster than our ego can keep up. We often resist the breaking open of our own shell, afraid of the vulnerability that lies beneath. But the pink full moon asks us, do we dare to see the beauty in the violence of our own transformation? Do we dare to embrace the resistance? The pain we feel is not death, it is the reminder that we are alive. Our body is the witness to this cosmic shift. It's the purification of our water. We're going to talk about the somatic echo. We consist, for the most part, of water, and the moon pulls at our inner tides. The Anishinaabe also called this the moon of the fish that purify the water. This is our physical reality. The permafrost in our minds begins to thaw, and that causes a tidal wave in our nervous system. The permafrost in our minds and connective tissue begins to thaw. And thawing is a messy, unpredictable, and painful process. Those shivers down our back, that sudden pressure on our chest, like we can't breathe, or those tears that come out of our eyes without having a story to explain them. Sudden heat, that is not a breakdown, that is discharge. That is purification, that is cleansing. We are collectively thawing. The trauma energy that was frozen in our connective tissue for generations now becomes liquid. And we have to let it flow. We have to trust our body. Our bodies knows how to wash away the ballast of the past to the ocean of oblivion. We do not only work with the stars, but also with the elements of the seasons. Our inner river is finally becoming a lazy river again. And honey, I want to introduce you and to give credits where credit's due. Because this is somatic witchcraft. It's working with the fluids in our own tissues. This full moon manifests in the axis of Libra, and because of that, the light falls mercilessly on our relationships. We can no longer hide. The masks we put on in the winter to keep the peace are beginning to crack. What we swallowed to avoid hurting the other is now burning in our throats. Libra forces us into harmony, but remember, true harmony does not ignore the shadow. And we see this in the world around us too. There is so much struggle, but that struggle often begins within ourselves. We can only make peace with another when we cease the war within ourselves. The irritation we feel with another, that tells us something about our own freedom. And look honestly in the mirror, face it. What have we kept hidden to belong? Lay down our weapons and restore the balance in our own heart. Another force of this full moon in Libra is he forces us into an honest inventory of our relationships. True harmony is not silence for the sake of peace, but the courage to name the disharmony. And this is the moment for our own inner peace treaty. We must ask ourselves which parts of our soul have we placed in the shadow to be accepted? Which nuclear options do we use in our communication to protect ourselves from real intimacy? The irritation we feel with the other is often the call for liberation from ourselves. Again, because the message is very important, the pink full moon invites us to restore the balance, not by ignoring the shadows, but by looking at the shadows, looking the shadows, our shadows, straight in the eye and saying, I see you, and you are allowed here. What war are we still waging on another, purely to avoid the confrontation with our own emptiness? The pink full moon does not ask for a ceasefire with the outside world, but for a surrender to our own truth. In the stilled chaos echoes of history, we commemorate Bak Boya on this day, on the day of the pink full moon. It's the day, it's the story of Lord Buddha who, armed with nothing but his presence, prevented a war by putting wisdom above greed. And that is the blueprint for our own inner revolution. The greatest battle takes place in the trenches of our own hearts. In other words, in the Buddhist tradition, we celebrate Bak Boya. It's the day on which Lord Buddha prevented the war by placing wisdom above ego. The victory of wisdom over the ego. That is our ultimate task under this light. We are no longer victims of our circumstances or our origin. We are the lotus, the mud of our past, the trauma of our ancestors, and the shadows in our hearts are not our enemies. They are the rich breeding ground from which our wisdom grows. Without the mud, no flower. Without the breaking ice, no spring. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed out of your mind, anxious, take a moment to remember to be the lotus. Let's all be the lotus. And let's especially not forget that this lotus, this flower, does not derive its beauty from the clarity of the sky, but from the depth and the weight of the mud in which it roots. Our past, the painful fault lines in our soul, the unprocessed traumas of the generations that came before us, they are not our enemy. They are the sacred compass for our awakening. Without the mud, there is no growth. Without the violence of the breaking ice, there is no liberation. We stand here. Oh, I felt my throat chakra closing up for a moment there. I know that it's my ancestral lines that it's having his influences on me. So I felt the need to burn some sage and a cinnamon, which I'm having here right now. I also noticed that my dog noticed my energy. She picked it up in her sleep. So I wanted to comfort her a little bit. I'm going to close this off. Um, we stand here as the sum of tens of thousands of survivors, our ancestors. Feel the power of those ancestors in our back, like a warm wind pushing us forward. They endured the cold so that we can now stand in this light. We are their dream becoming reality. We are the proof that winter never has the last word. When we look outside later and see that pink glow, breathe in deeply. Feel how the permafrost in our chest definitely makes way for flowing water. The river is free. The way is open. The only question that remains is, do we dare to take up the space that growth asks of us? Do we dare to shine with the intensity of a flower that has defeated the ice? And let me know in the comments, what part of our old armor have we left behind in the mud today? What new version of ourselves is now beginning to break through the surface? In the comments, leave just one word for the trauma we are letting thaw this moon. Give it a name so that it can flow away. Thank you so much for traveling through the depth of this night. Stay tuned to the truth of our own bones. Subscribe and don't forget that frequency is power. Until the next full moon. Bye!